Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 267. Wow, time sure flies, but we're all still in quarantine. Anyway, let's just get into the chapter. This was a pretty fun chapter. We kind of went all over the place. It was you could feel the energy in the chapter. We were doing a lot of different things. We were covering a lot of ground. Actually, it's really, now I'm saying it out loud, it's pretty interesting that we were covering so much ground. Anyway, this week showed us that we made kind of we progressed with the whole Shigaraki part of the plot, and we continued going forward with the mansion part of the plot. So this video, like always, we're gonna go through. We're gonna do the walkthrough and the overview, and of course I have my notes here, so we are all good to go. One last thing before we get started, I hope you all are having a great day. Anyway, in terms of general thoughts, I saw a lot of chatter going on the forums. I saw some comments on the Viz page. So, gonna address some of these things first in terms of what I think, because this seems to be where the chatter is focused. First thing, are Tokoyami or Hawks going to be killed? I saw people talking about that there were a lot of flags being brought up. And in terms of being killed, I don't think so. Are they going to die? Maybe. And when I say they, I mean like the possibility is there for either. Tokoyami's probably safe, but Hawks is the one that's really the question mark. When it comes to Hawks, I'm not foreseeing him dying by Dobby's hands, although I am open to the possibility of Hawks dying at the hospital, like the same way that Night Eye did. My perspective, Hawks still has to follow up on his hands being dirty type rhetoric. He needs to come clean with that. He needs to have a reckoning for that. He was being a bit pragmatic throughout all of this, and someone's going to need to talk to him about this. And he still has to account for the best Genus and Bakugo plot setup that he's been involved in. So because of those elements, I still think I still see him surviving long enough to have one of those two elements resolved. Averted though, if he has a letter or a will that reveals everything that he did after he has perished, that would be an easy way to work around that, and that could work. Anyway, going back onto the whole thing with Hawks, the way I'm seeing this, every time that Tokoyami shows up with Hawks and they're working together, it really just builds up the potential for conflict here. If Bakugo ever finds out what Hawks might have been involved in, Tokoyami will now be a position where he tries to defend Hawks. And it could be, for me, I envision a really cool scene maybe where Hawks is in the hospital and Bakugo is yelling at him, and then Tokoyami's there to defend Hawks from Bakugo, because it's just not fair to be yelling at the guy when he's already so hurt. There's a lot of different ways that the author could play around with it, but the potential is still there. Other comments were talking about whether or not Hawks was going to be a hero after this, because they were pointing out that Hawks' wings were damaged. And honestly, Hawks' wings, they can come back. The feathers can come back. We need to see, because the author could say that the wings themselves, like the bone structure of the wings, got damaged, or maybe they just can't produce feathers anymore. That mechanism that produces the feathers gets damaged. If the author wants to say that that's how Hawks has been injured, then that would totally work. But right now, we don't know if the feather growing capability of Hawks' wings has been damaged. One more thing about Dobby in general that I just want to say is that I want to make it clear that I do think that Dobby is still going to give Tokoyami and Hawks a hard time. If anything, Dobby versus Tokoyami might give Tokoyami an opportunity to see how he deals with his weaknesses. Next point to talk about: the author trolling us. Man, look, the author knows what he's doing. That whole blacking of the screen, that was so cheap. Like, come on. Oh, sorry, not the screen, the thought bubble. Like, who is Dobby? Honestly, look, the author's making it a big deal. He knows that the viewers or the readers are there and they're wondering about it. He probably knows the theories that people are talking about right now. He probably knows that people think that it's Toya. So he's playing, he's making it worse. He's playing along with it. I bet the author's having fun. I bet in the back of his mind he's like, yeah, look for clues, you little punks. Look for clues. Anyway, it's good. It's good that he's holding it. He's holding it for so long. It means that he's putting thought into it. So that'll be a cool reveal. In terms of who it might be Toya, maybe. Recently, I think there's slowly but surely there's more of a case being built for it. There's more things that I'm seeing in the narrative that I think could be used to justify Toya. Or, it could also be someone from the car crash. Who knows? Right now, we have to answer how Dobby can know Hawks' name. And there's a lot of ways to answer that. If they were in the same class, that'd be good enough. If Dobby was one of the people in the car accident, that would be good enough. And of course, when I say car accident, I have it on the screen. It's from like Hox's origin story or flashback. So yeah, all that I really get here is that Hox knows who it is. And so people are saying that because of that, Hox might be dying because that way the information doesn't come out. But it's like, the author could still use it, especially in this chapter where you have Hox having his significance with Endeavor being built up. You could easily have Hox telling Endeavor like, hey guys, sit down for this. You need to hear this. Could go either way for me right now. I'm still hoping that it ain't Toya and it's something else, just because I think that would be a great subversion of, well, how readers are trained to read a material and how readers are trained to theorize. Next broad topic that I think is worth talking about, Mirko's character. So it seems to me, from the way that she was speaking, Mirko got carried away with trying to take down the Nomu, but once she saw she was in a losing fight, she decided it was time to go for Garaki. So, in other words, the way that I am seeing her thought process, it seems plan A was to eliminate the Nomu and pursue Garaki safely and without injury. However, when that fell apart, she realized the only way to get to Garaki was going to be to risk getting wounded in the process. So, important things here. Note that Mirko did not have any injuries when we the readers come back to her. That first panel where she's there, she has no new injuries, meaning that she was handling the Nomu well up until that point. So in this case, Mirko's bad assumption was that she assumed that the Nomu would stay at one power level. And when that fell through, she realized she had to get desperate. She didn't have the luxury to be careful. She didn't have the luxury to take the Nomus out. She didn't have the luxury to pull off a clean victory at that point anymore. That's what I think. When you look at the way she's speaking in the chapter, that's what justifies it. You know for sure she's having fun with the fight, but she's realizing that her job comes first. And at this point, she's the only way to get to Garaki at this point is going to be taking the injuries. And next general point, what happens next in the Story Hero Academia? It'll be exciting. Mirko is pretty much cleared to die in this fight now. But it looks like Shigaraki is going to be the thing that comes next. It's going to be interesting to see whether or not Shigaraki is the one that wipes her, but I don't think so. I don't think it'll be that quick. We'll also have to see how strong Shigaraki is going to be. And from the way that this chapter is set up, most likely Shigaraki is going to be able to wake up Gigantomachia. And when I say that, maybe he's going to be able to do it just from a distance. Maybe he's not going to need the radio. Maybe he has a new quirk that specifically links him to Gigantomachia's head or something like that. You never know. But yeah, maybe Shigaraki is going to be able to wake up Gigantomachia. Maybe he'll be able to do one big attack that disintegrates the whole hospital. And then he has to run away. Maybe Giganto rampages out after he gets called up and starts running towards where Shigaraki is. Because then that would bring in people like Kirishima and the reserves. And it would involve Izuku's group somehow. There's still a lot of unknowns here. And we're again at another point of potential. The big thing is really going to be how strong, how stable is Shigaraki going to be at above 70%. Like how much of a problem is incomplete Shigaraki going to be? I still want to foresee that incomplete Shigaraki is going to be giving enough damage that he'll be able to run away, but not be able to actually maim anyone. Okay, those thoughts aside, let's just go into the page-by-page walkthrough, talk about little notes and details for each of the pages that I could spot. So starting up with page 2 and 3, actually no, the cover page. I just want to say that the cover page looks really good. I like what the author did with Mirko's missing hand, how he covered it up with all kinds of stuff. Now I kind of want to go back through all those post-apocalyptic pages just to see if any characters were missing or had their arms covered up in the way that Mirko has hers covered up. I just thought it was interesting. Also, I don't know, something about this image, I feel like I've seen it before, like the rabbits around Mirko, but I might just be wrong. Anyway, it's a beautiful picture, very beautiful art. Anyway, now page 2 and 3. So they give us a reiteration of Hox's weakness. We already knew that he had a problem with fire because we saw his feathers being burnt when Endeavor used them. However, that was never directly confirmed or directly spoken about. So when I see this, I think this is just the author reminding readers that, hey, no, this is a thing. In this scene, we also have the potential for Tokoyami to ruminate on a way to deal with a weakness. The logic being, Tokoyami's asking about how does Hox deal with weaknesses. It's probably because Tokoyami's wondering, how do I deal with weaknesses? So maybe we'll see that in the upcoming confrontation between him and Dobby if they are going to go for it. Other little details, Hox grabs a fan's heart. That was kind of funny. The kids are on the retreat with Fat Gum, and Kaminari is going to go back towards where Jiro is. So it was cute just to see them all riding Fat Gum. Page 4 to 5 is kind of interesting because now they're talking about the logic behind their choices. So my point of interest for this one is Tokoyami. And what I want to talk to you guys about is just how an author kind of has to justify a character being in a particular place because that character has to fulfill a story purpose, and how the world has to kind of like bend a little bit around that character. Because something kind of interesting here is happening with Tokoyami. Because Fat Gum tells us that the kids were brought in for the wide range quirks. And you know, to some degree, Tokoyami has a wide range quirk. But you have to admit, Tokoyami is not in the same class as Shroom Girl, Mudman, and Kaminari. He just isn't. That's a lie. He's not in the same class. And then we have Fat Gum giving the second part of the reasoning, that being that he wants to get the kids out of there because now their attacks are just going to trip the allies up. And you know, justified. But again, that logic doesn't pertain to Tokoyami. The interesting thing here is what the author had to do was justify why Tokoyami has to be in this particular spot to see Hawks. And so how did he do that? He had us specifically see Tokoyami using a giant dark shadow. But that's where I want to kind of point you to. When you look back to when Tokoyami did dark shadow, we were told specifically that Tokoyami's job was to plug up the crazy long hallway with his own full power, right? There's a lot of weird stipulations here. One, that hallway is probably not dark enough. Tokoyami was able to use giant dark shadow, but legit, come on. Do you think that hallway is dark enough for Tokoyami to use giant dark shadow? No, it's probably a super lit hallway. So that's the first thing. It's a conditional power. Did the heroes know how well lit that hallway was going to be? I doubt it. I doubt that's the like level of detail they got. But of course, the author's going to the author's going to do it. It happened, so it works. But what I'm trying to tell you is just how the world has to bend in order to make some little parts true. Because the author needed Tokoyami to be in this particular spot. And the weirdest thing with, now that you look back at that whole situation with Tokoyami, why did they need Tokoyami to plug up the hole? Because all Tokoyami did was destroy stuff. Think about that. He didn't add any kind of new thing in there. He just wrecked stuff. Why not just get Cementos? Because I can clearly see Cement when Tokoyami is destroying things with Dark Shadow. Why not just get Cementos to just go over there? It's the same way they ferried Tokoyami over there, ferry Cementos over there and have him plug everything up. Right? It doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense in the long run. That was a very situational type thing. Again, it's happening because the author needs Tokoyami to specifically be there. And at that point, what you have to be judging is how well the author can sell you on that little trick he did. And to the author's credit, he totally can sell me, because there's enough reasonable plausibility here to say that someone legitimately thought, let's have Tokoyami do this particular part of the plan. Although, again, given that they don't know how well lit that hallway is, I do still call that was a little bit shaky. But you see the end result. It's because Tokoyami had to be in a spot where he has to leave the combat area with the other kids. Another thing that kind of points to us that the whole thing with the wide range of quirks doesn't fit Tokoyami is that when we had Mudman and Shroom Girl using their quirks, Tokoyami wasn't involved in that particular part of demonstration. Remember, go back to chapter 264, because 264 was the chapter that told us why the kids were there, and the three characters that were shown were Kaminari, She-Mage, and Mudman. So it is really interesting to see how we have a character telling us that this is why characters are here, but we know this is not the full reality. And again, Tokoyami did get stipulations within the actual chapter, but there is a big distinction between Tokoyami and the other three. Like when Fat Gum is talking there, those words don't apply to Tokoyami. He's special. He's there for something else. So the point of this discussion is just, this was a portion where we are deducing or reverse engineering the author's thought process as to how he justified putting Tokoyami in a particular spot. I think this is just, it's always fun to kind of work backwards and see maybe a potential thought process. Other details on this first page is that we had a nice also progression of Mount Lady. She got hit in the face behind Fat Gum, and then she got mad and started pounding back. It was just a funny little background detail. Another good attention to detail that the author pulled off in this page is that Fat Gum specifically turned around to see where the explosion came from. That's why Tokoyami was able to see, because the explosion happened right behind Fat Gum. So unless Fat Gum had turned, Tokoyami was never going to see Hawks going around. And specifically, The next page is where we see Tokoyami seeing something so fast that he was able to recognize. This is like good for Tokoyami, because when you look at that first bit of the explosion, you specifically see something that flew out and went backwards. And it's actually cool to see how fast that went. And it's cool to see that Tokoyami has like hawk eyes that can actually see that. That was really, really neat. Moving on to page 6 and 7, the details for this page. Hawk still has feathers that haven't been burnt. If he hides those, he can attack Dobby from behind possibly, but it's cool to see them. Hawks notes that the flames are getting hotter, and that makes me wonder, well, if Dobby is related to Endeavor, is Dobby about to start overheating? Is this going to be the way out for Tokoyami and Hawks later? On page 7, we get something that legitimately makes me just curious about where Twice's body actually is in relation to everything, because it makes me doubt the stuff from last chapter. It's just like what I concluded from last chapter. So I'm gonna adjust my thoughts and say that the Twice that fell in the last chapter was the double, because the double did mention that he dropped on something, dropped on concrete from a while ago, right? It's kind of weird because you can see Twice dead right on the first level. It's kind of a little bit weird. Actually, now seeing all that blood, I wonder if Toga just goes to the body and drains the blood right now. It's still warm. I wonder if that'll work. Yeah, maybe that'd be a cool thing for Toga to do. Anyway, we move on. The other thing is that Dobby's psycho smile. So my interpretation, given Dobby's character, is that he's smiling so much because he's angry, and smiling because this confirms his bias against heroes. This isn't the first time that we've seen Dobby smiling at something going wrong. I will refer you to chapter 264 when he knows things are going wrong, and he's coming up the stairs and he looks really, it's actually the same smile, except the eyes look a little bit more deranged, but the same wide smile. So I think it's fair to say that Dobby smiles like this when he sees something that confirms his bias against the heroes, and this might just be how he handles. Regardless, he definitely seems to respond to stress with a really crazy smile. Okay, so page 8 and 9, important things is that Hawks establishes that Dobby is equal to Shigaraki in a particular realm of significance, that being their origins or the mystery of their origins. And in this page, or in these pages, we also get confirmation about Hawks' past, that being that he went through a special program, and we knew this information from the data book, so it's just cool to see the information canonized properly in the manga now. One thing that I do want to point you towards is that the author is sort of reusing imagery. Like, the author has previously used the imagery of Hawk standing between two people. We got it back in one of his early chapters, chapter 192. Mind you, that was a different context, but the imagery of Hawks being framed by two people on the sides, that is something that the author seems to be maintaining here. Page 10 and 11, the page with the giant troll, but also some really nice stuff for Hawks. So Hawks in this page reaffirms that he wants to be like Endeavor. So this just reaffirms that Hawks has been a fan of Endeavor since he was a kid. This shouldn't be a surprise that Hawks wants to be like Endeavor, because we know from his flashback that he's always been watching Endeavor, even when Endeavor was in his younger days. We know this. But that makes me want to tell you a quick little story from Tumblr, because I saw this when I was doing the Endeavor x Hawks video. But man, sometimes when people want to believe something, they will do a lot to try and twist it to make it work in their head. And you know what? I do it too. I do it a lot of times. But there was this one time where someone had said, and this was a popular post, that Hawks only had an Endeavor plushie because Hawks was poor. This person went through all the extra material to say, like, well, we knew that the Endeavor plushies just ended up in the bargain bin, so therefore Hawks got it. Hawks is not Endeavor's #1 fan, therefore he just got the Endeavor doll because he was poor. And it's like, come on. You can clearly see what the material intends to say, and it's just funny. It's just funny moments like this. I hope whoever that person was that wrote that popular post, I hope they're kind of eating it now. But pettiness aside, this was really cute. I actually really liked it. There is a significant thing in this page, that being that the author is re-emphasizing the Endeavor being a light metaphor. We've seen this metaphor before. The first time I think we saw it was in chapter 244. When it came from that weird bum guy, the seer of the stars or whatever. And then we had that reiterated again when we had ending. So right now the author has established this shining light metaphor for Endeavor, not only from the villains, but also from a hero. So this seems to be what the author himself wants to set Endeavor up as a beacon of light, which is pretty interesting. But we'll have to see how he continues to use the metaphor to see where exactly he wants to go with it. And then we have page 11. Dobby reveals his name. Only Hox hears it. Great. We'll have to see what the author wants to do with that. If he wants to drag this out longer, if he's going to have Hox tell someone eventually. One thing I want to ask you guys is, what is he doing in these bottom two panels? The author takes extra care to show us that he's fiddling with his neck, but I can't really tell what exactly is going on here. Do you guys have any ideas? Okay, page 12 to 13. Dobby reveals his intentions and that he is a true Stain fanboy. Dobby says something interesting, that there are no true heroes. So, you know, if we remember, Stain wanted to get rid of the phony heroes, but what Dobby's saying here is that there aren't true heroes. So that counts, I think, All Might as well. In other words, Dobby just wants to get rid of all heroes. Dobby is very unhinged. Right now, this page pretty much establishes him as the secondary villain. You know, him saying that he doesn't care about Shigaraki pretty much says he's the Starscream of the show. So it's pretty cool to see him breaking out. I never would have thought that he was actually this much of a Stain fanboy. I didn't think he was this obsessed about Stain. So that is a really nice surprise. I really like that. I like his line about a single person with a single conviction has the power to change the world. But the big thing definitely is that I think Dobby is an extremist, right? He's unhinged enough to be an extremist. He probably doesn't think that All Might is a true hero. So it's going to be interesting to see how this mentality goes. Honestly, this makes me feel like Dobby is the kind of guy who's building himself up. Like he's telling us in the last page, you should have been keeping an eye on me. But I'm like, Dobby, I just think you're building yourself up. You're like Starscream from the Transformers. You're trying to build yourself up as if you're this big deal but guy. All for One doesn't even care about you, man. You're a guy that burns by your own power. You're just burning alive here. Like, you're quite literally smoking in that panel when you're talking to Hox. You're gonna be burned alive. So that's what I'm just... You know, Dobby just feels like he's like all kinds of self-important. And so I'm sure this kind of character, he will definitely do a lot of damage on a personal basis. But All for One ignored him, right? Like he accepted Dobby as Shigaraki's little friend. I'm sure All for One doesn't care about Dobby in the long run. If that turns around, great. But Dobby just feels like he's a more homegrown villain. He's more of a very personal villain, like, you know, the Endeavor plotline. But I just don't... Dobby's never going to be on the realm that Izuku has to deal with him. You know, like, at least from this perspective right now. He's definitely putting in a lot of work. Definitely. But it's still Dobby. You know, Dobby still fails. He still lost twice. Twice was important for his... Like, twice would have made his plan go easier. And he just let twice die. This is not someone that you should put any kind of... Like, I wouldn't buy the stock called Dobby, you know? Okay, so the remainder of that page just takes us back to Gigantomachia, and by page 14 and 15, we are switching up the tempo a little bit. It reveals that Gigantomachia is waiting on a message, and that's absolutely dangerous. It's following up from Fat Gum telling us to not worry about him. I told you guys when that happened, that's a bad assumption. It's only a matter of time. The author reminding us that he's watching right now means that this thing is going to go off relatively soon. It might also be a technique just to drum up the tension. Back at the hospital, we get the big detail that the Nomus are coming awake, and also we see how Mirko is doing. It looks like she's been keeping the fight up. At page 16 and 17, we have Mirko running away, and we get to see the crazy damage that she is taking. So we see that there is ripped off hair, she has a skewered ear, and she has her abdomen like just ripped. What I want to say about that is about the abdomen. This is not the first time we've seen an abdomen injury. Guys, remember, the Hero Academia author seems to have a fascination with repeating imagery, and he seems to have a fascination with abdomen injuries. All Might got hit in the abdomen. Endeavor got hit in the abdomen. And when Endeavor got hit in the abdomen, All Might specifically had a panel where he was grabbing his abdomen. And now Mirko is also getting hit in the abdomen. In the same spot even. The author has a fascination with that spot. And, you know... Honestly, in terms of how that shakes me, the people that have gotten hit in the abdomen have survived so far. So that actually makes me feel like Mirko's gonna survive, but I'm not gonna put credit in it, right? Only after the third time can we say that there is a certain pattern. 2 times isn't enough to say it. We'll have to see. Mirko might be the one that like disrupts the current line of coincidences. But definitely her getting hit in the abdomen, I think that's the author's fascination with that particular injury. Also, we already talked about it, but we did get the Mirko characterization in these pages. One thing I want to add is that she seems to have made peace with her death, but that kind of makes sense. She's kind of one of those characters that just goes out and lives life to the fullest. So it makes sense that she'd be okay with the idea of dying so long as she accomplishes her commitment. We go into page 18 and 19, and that's where we see Mirko going in for the big shot and the big turnaround happening in the chapter. So big points here. Garaki's not so much. He makes a rainbow. Beautiful. Mirko gets skewered, and Endeavor shows up directly behind the Nomu, which implies that he didn't drop down, that he came into that tunnel from behind. From that, it's telling me that there might be other heroes there too, and maybe they came from a hole that a Nomu made, or maybe they came from the secret stairs. We'll have to see. But at that point, I had to point out, where is Crust? Why isn't Crust here? Why was it Endeavor that was able to get here first? Well, it might be. One of my scenarios is that Crust got pushed back so far that he got pushed beyond the stairs. Endeavor was able to come in, and Endeavor was able to rush through. When he got to the main area, he saw that all the Nomu went after Mirko, and he was able to just go up right behind the Nomu. Maybe the other heroes are holding off the other Nomu. Now, the big thing here is that when you go into that final bit of pages, page 20, page 21, Endeavor saving Mirko and giving her the opportunity to make the kick is really what tells me that Mirko is now pretty much set up to die, because right there, teamwork, the critical moment, the moment that Mirko could not afford to be alone. If Mirko was alone, she would not get that hit in. It's because of teamwork that this has now worked out for her. And you might say, no, Trip, like she could still make the hit. Guy, Mirko is the person who missed the doctor just because she got hit on the hip by a Nomu. If there is one thing that we know, is that Mirko is the one most prone to being disrupted by a last minute hit. We have 2 examples from the past where little bits of force were enough to throw her off. So many times this girl was close to actually landing a fatal hit, but got thrown off. So definitely being skewered in the leg is going to stop her. I don't know if I have to defend it to that much, but you never really know. You never really know what people say in the comments. Any Hoosers. At this point, we also had Tokoyami saving Hoxha. The little thing I want to establish here is that when you look at Dark Shadow is crying, which just reaffirms to you that there is going to be the rhetoric of weakness coming up here, because Tokoyami is not set up to go up against Dobby. But it'll be interesting to see if Tokoyami has a way to overcome his weakness. Maybe he comes up with something new. Maybe he has some kind of pill that just releases a lot of fire extinguisher fluid or something like that. You never know. Anyway, that's the end of this video. That's the end of all my notes for the chapter. Guys, let me know what you thought down below. Overall, exciting chapter. When you look at the structure of the chapter, you know, you have the author started strong at the beginning with finishing up the Dobby stuff, and then halfway through the chapter he very hastily started trying to make the situation look really bad, had to really quickly show us how bad things were looking for Mirko, and then he gave us that little bit of hope, that little bit, you know, like we're going down, that little bit of a bump. Now the only thing is, like, is it going to be a sustained bump, or is it going to be a spike and then we're going to go back to misery in like 2 weeks? We'll have to see. Anyway, everyone, let me know what you thought down below. Gotta run. And till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.